I'm Betty Dimitropoulos, Vice President of the Arcadian Association of Melbourne and Victoria of Ballroom. I'd like to welcome you all, and especially the Thyssen family, to our beautiful Arcadia Ballroom. Welcome. I'd also like to welcome, is this too loud? No, I'd also like to welcome and introduce our MC for the evening, Mr. John Mangos. Lots can be said about John in his career, but I'll be brief. As most of you will know, if not all of you, John is an Australian news presenter, journalist, and he also made cameo appearances on the Australian comedy programs Pizza, Swift and Shift Couriers, and Hoosos. He began his career as a journalist for National 9 News in 1978 at the GTV9 network, the newsroom in Melbourne. He was hired by legendary news director John Sorrell, who wanted to make John the first Greek Australian face on mainstream commercial television, and he succeeded. During his 14 years with the Nine Network, he covered state and federal politics before becoming the United States correspondent. In 1989, he joined Graham Kennedy on his late-night news and current affairs program, Coast to Coast, replacing Kate Suckley. John has also been a news presenter for Eyewitness News on 10 Network, an international reporter for the Midday Show, and the host of his own daytime chat show, At Home with John Mangos on 7 Network for 2 years. In December 2011, John joined the 7 Network as a fill-in news presenter on 7 Morning News and 7 4:30 News. He also regularly appeared on Sunrise and The Morning Show. He is the director of Megasphere Media. Welcome, John.
Thank you. Becky, thank you for that way too generous introduction. But it was very kind of you. But you did remind me, when you talked about John Sorrell hiring me, I joined when Channel 9 was at Richmond. And as you mentioned, I was the first Greek Australian face on TV. So a couple of years later, a very nervous young John Mangos gets invited to Compare, doing what I'm doing now, MC my first gig at the old Dallas Brooks Hall. It was the Shell Folkloric Concert. And I was nervous because the minister was there that night, and the minister in those days was called the Minister for Ethnic Affairs, and it happened to be Jeff Kennett. So Jeff, you saw me at my first gig. I'm still behind the microphone, and I presume you're still making millions of dollars. A very warm welcome to you all. Of course, I'd like to acknowledge some, well, you're all special, but some guests in particular. And of course, we start with our valued hosts, Mr. Nick Thyssen and his wife, Maureen Thyssen, whose fortitude, courage and persistence innovated the national and international food industry. And we're going to hear a lot about Nick, but how about we make him feel welcome? He hasn't been the best of health. We have dear members of the Thyssen family, children Lainey, Becky and Nick Caddis, and Eleonora, grandchildren and siblings of Nick, including his sister Evanthea Tsatsalmas, and a niece who was with us from Greece, and that would be Sia Kabis. Welcome to Melbourne, Australia. In many ways, this is a convergence of giants, because our author, as you know, Dr. Anastasios Tamis is a giant in his field. He's a giant intellectual and scholar, and him paying tribute to you, Nick, a giant in industry, it's going to make tonight very, very special indeed. I've mentioned Jeff, but I would further like, as if I need to remind you, that Jeff has had an ongoing commitment to Australia's Hellenes and the Hellenic values, rightly asserted him as the most popular post-war premier amongst Greek citizens of Greek ancestry, and Jeff is still my favourite premier of all time. The esteemed delegate of the Greek Orthodox community of Melbourne and Victoria and Treasurer, Professor Marinos Perperis, the president of the Pan-Arcadian Association, Mr. George Kotsirillos, who of course has very generously organised these premises for us tonight, and it's a beautiful hall. Next we have the President of the International and Parishes Council of the Holy Archdiocese, and that's Mr. Tony Tsourdalakis. We have the President of the Federation of the Arcadian Associations, Melbourne and Victoria, Mrs. Spidmo Papaioannou, the Director of Cardiothoracic Surgery and Cardiac Services at the Royal Melbourne Hospital, Professor James Tatoulis and Mrs. Elizabeth Tatoulis, great benefactors of the Department of Classics at Melbourne University, the Managing Principal of Prima Legal and CEO of the Hellenic Australia Chambers of Commerce and Industry, Mrs. Fotini Kypreos, the former National Sales Manager in Nick Thyssen's former industries, Mr. Alan Marion, the Proprietor and Managing Director of the Kernung Citrus at Ballroom. That's a leading citrus grower and a close associate to Nick Thyssen, Mr. Philip Williamson. We have Ms. Natasha Spanos, representing the Principal of the Oakley Grammar School, and we have the Principal of Alphington Grammar, Dr. Vivian Niku. We've got quite a few special guests here tonight. I've actually got to turn the page. To our dedicated publishing team, headed by the Director of HELLENIC Printers, Mr. Peter Zapparis, Mrs. Christina Kotsivaki Saris, the Vice President of the Board of the Australian Institute of Macedonian Studies, Mrs. Simila Stamatopoulos, who served with passion as President of the Federation of the Pontian Association of Melbourne and Victoria, George Theodore, President and the board at the Hegelian Association of Melbourne and Victoria. And we have directors, CEOs, managers and members of industrious staff of current and past industries established and opened by the Thyssen family. The President and members of the Board of the Australian Institute of Macedonian Studies, the President and members of the Board of the Pan-Arcadian Association, members of the Board and Associates of Haki, Presidents of community organisations, delegates of the Melbourne Children's Hospital, which of course will benefit from your generosity this evening. And if I haven't mentioned you by name, welcome to all the rest of you. Just very briefly, because you're going to hear a lot about the book, but just to set the scene, the purpose of today's event is to obviously celebrate the launch of the book, titled Nick Thyssen, The Story of a Great Innovator to Remember. This book is an historical biography. It's a narrative that illustrates and that depicts the road to success by a man that arrived as an immigrant with £5 in his pockets. Look, I've got a rather long explanation of the book, but I think I'll leave it to our speakers, other than to share a quote with you, which I think epitomises, obviously, Nick's career success. In the book, there's a quote that says, "Do not stop. Do not be timid when you lose. You have to get back up. Get back up. Feel strong, even when you lose." You said those words. And that's your ethos, and we're celebrating that here tonight. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we should get on with the show. You don't need me to tell you all about the book, because most of you will be leaving home with one tonight. And as I say, we have other esteemed speakers who will tell you a bit more about the book as we go. So, I'd like at this stage to introduce our first speaker, and that would be the President of the Pan-Arcadian Association of Melbourne and Victoria, Mr. George Kotsirillos, to welcome you all officially. George Kotsirillos.
Good evening, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure and honour to welcome you all to the book launch of Nick Thyssen, The Story of a Great Innovator to Remember, written by our eminent historian and academic Professor Anastasios Tamis. As the President of the Association, Pan-Arcadian Association of Melbourne and Victoria, I am delighted to receive you at the premises of our historic building for this special occasion, the famous Laco Hall, which has been an integral part of Melbourne and Victoria during the past 110 years. Over the past year, we have named the building the Arcadian to reflect who we represent. Your presence here this evening is greatly appreciated and adds to the excitement and significance of this event. As an Australian-born Hellene, I do record in my memories the brand and the mythical legends associated Mr. Patra Juice, as Mr. Nick Thyssen used to be known in our society. Not many people knew Mr. Nick Thyssen by name, but everyone knew the Patra brand. And we, as young children, were proud to read, listen, eavesdrop, and snoop the Greek name of Patra associated with the Greek Australian business. Mr. Patra was not just a man of significance. He was for us a legendary figure. Thus, an Australian Arcadian, I feel so honoured to have him with us this evening, this legendary industrialist, who with his achievements, talents and innovations became the role model, the source of inspiration and success. I also wish to express this evening my deep and sincere appreciation and gratitude to the author, Mr. Professor Anastasios Tamis, who during the last 40 years as a researcher and as an academic enriched the history of migration and settlement of the Greeks in the diaspora, publishing over 30 monographs and hundreds of chapters in books and periodicals worldwide. As Arcadians, we are particularly happy and proud to have his book written on the children of Pan, the Arcadians, which stands as a monumental book and a work of love for us. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an event to feel happy, an event to feel proud. I wish to thank you all for attending this launching event. Thank you very much.
Allow me now to call upon the CEO of the Hellenic Australian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, Mrs. Fotini Gipreos, to say a few words.
Do I get an extra 5 minutes? Ladies and gentlemen and distinguished guests, it's an honour to speak today about an extraordinary man whose entrepreneurial spirit and innovation have profoundly impacted both the Australian food industry and the international food industry. That man is Mr. Nick Thyssen, born Nikolaos Theodosiadis, a true trailblazer whose journey from a small village in Greece to become a major force in Australian business and a giant of transformative industrial innovation, both locally and internationally, is nothing short of inspirational. Nick's story begins in Valimytika, Greece, where, as a young boy, he learned the value of entrepreneurship by watching merchants and deal makers in his village. This formative experience instilled in him a resourceful and creative mindset that would serve him well throughout his life. And at just 16 years old, Nick left for Australia in 1951, armed with nothing but hope, determination, a good work ethic, and that £5 that John mentioned earlier that his father gave him when he embarked the ship for his long journey. But upon arriving in Australia, he quickly realised the importance of learning and adapting, and within 2 years he changed his name, a strategic move to help him integrate into Australian society. Nick's curiosity and resourcefulness were key to his success, and in the 60s he identified an opportunity to solve a simple yet significant problem at his fruit shop. An unsealed and muddy road prevented the housewives from gaining access to the shop. So his solution, a delivery service. This innovation became Melbourne's first fresh produce delivery service, laying the foundation for what would become an immensely successful business. And his tenacity and entrepreneurship drove his innovative solutionist mentality throughout his career. Unsold fruit in the fruit shop then became a basis for another business idea, delivering fresh fruit salad to restaurants. This expanded into Patra Foods, where Nick introduced another world-first product, fresh bottled orange juice. At a time when there was only sugary concentrates and canned juice on the market, Nick's fresh juice was a game changer. He even hand squeezed the first 50 gallons of the juice himself, demonstrating his hands-on leadership style. And despite early scepticism, because there's always scepticism when you're innovative, his belief in the fresh juice paid off. By 1964, Patra Foods employed a dozen staff, and Nick's bold marketing strategies, like offering free samples to customers, were working.
His innovation continued with the introduction of fresh juice in plastic bottles, another first in the industry, which helped Patra Foods expand rapidly and set a new standard. But his leadership extended beyond innovation because he was also a master strategist. In 1969, he hired Graham Jennings, former CEO of Pepsi-Cola Southeast Asia, as his general manager. So with Nick's strategic vision and Graham's expertise, Patra Orange Juice became a household name in Australia and internationally. And by the early 1970s, Patra Food was delivering over 50 million litres of juice annually. But in 1971, Patra was sold to Beatrice Foods, a large US company, but Nick didn't stop there. He continued to innovate, founding Ready Cut Company, which pioneered the production of pre-packaged sealed fresh salads and soups in Australia. And the next breakthrough came with Tetra Pak. Nick packaged fresh food and soups without the need for preservatives, another innovative world first, and later those rights were sold to the UK giant Unilever, further cementing Nick's legacy. His later ventures included the original juice company, inspired with the support and leadership of his daughter Lainey Quinn, and with Becky, and then ProCow, an award-winning yogurt and dairy company we all know and love. ProCow became a leader in Greek-style yogurts and dairy products, with Nick's son Adam George playing a key role in its success and the success of the family businesses for the 2 decades prior to his untimely passing. The business continues to enjoy extraordinary success, led by Nick's daughter Lainey. This story is a testament to the values of hard work, resilience, and continuous learning. Nick's success wasn't driven by his desire to become wealthy, but by the thrill of overcoming challenges. And I will give you another quote from this incredible book. Nick once said, "Wealth gives you the opportunity to put your ideas to good use." His entrepreneurial journey is a celebration of family. Throughout his career, he was supported by his wife Maureen, his Cinderella, his daughters Lainey and Becky, and his son Adam George. They were his foundation. They were his partners in life and in business. So this legacy is not just one of a business success, but of generosity, of fairness, a commitment to helping others around him succeed. This story is a reminder that success is built over time, through dedication, innovation, sacrifice, the courage to be bold, and the willingness to face the unknown. In closing, I'd like to congratulate, on behalf of the board of the Hellenic Australian Chamber of Commerce, not only in Victoria, but across the country. My colleagues from South Australia, Western Australia, Darwin, and New South Wales send their best wishes to you and your family tonight. Congratulations to a remarkable legacy that will inspire generations to come. Your life embodies the Hellenic ideals of family, humility, courage, and philotimo, values that have shaped your truly remarkable journey in business and in life. Congratulations.
That was beautifully put, Nick. Thank you very much indeed. Now an interesting guest, the Thyssens' former National Sales Manager and close collaborator to the Thyssens, Mr. Alan Marion, to salute the event on behalf of past colleagues and associates. Come on up.
Wow, what an audience. Thanks very much, John, and what a wonderful job you've done with the book. Now, I've got Nick looking at me, and I know full well if I don't get this information correct, I am going to cop it. So what I wanted to do is, on behalf of all the people that work for Nick, we are also very proud, and it was such a pleasure. Put it this way, there was never a dull moment working for Nick, as most of you would know. So the one thing with Nick, and it won't come up in the normal speeches tonight, is the fact that Nick knew how to handle problems. And he knew how to handle problems and turn them into opportunities. And those opportunities turned into much success in the businesses. So to illustrate that tonight, I'm going to tell you two stories. And the first is with Ready Cut Foods. We had distributors and they were on a percentage, like it was with Patra, like it was with Original Juice. And during the summer, we were doing extremely well with the salads and the fruit salads. And we were first to put salads into the supermarkets and in the delis of the supermarkets. And you'd have some, you know, Safeway stores and Coles and that, taking up to 40 or 55 kilo bags of coleslaw on a hot day. But for some reason, come Easter, the supermarkets decided that, oh, you can't sell salads in winter, and they'd take them out. So Nick was left with a problem. And the problem was, with these guys are on commission, what are we going to do? Because Nick was always just so keen to help people and make sure they're okay. Because unlike, you know, having a franchise, all our distributors were based on a handshake with Nick and a territory. Trust. So, Nick and I were sitting down one night and we said, well, we've got the equipment. Let's do fresh soup. And to come up with an idea to solve the problem is one thing, but to action it is another. And within 3 weeks, we were launching a 5-litre container of fresh soup. And I'm sure Maureen will remember that in those 3 weeks, Nick every night in the kitchen at your place was there desperately trying to get some flavours. And in 3 weeks, he came up with 3 beautiful flavoured soups. And when we did the launch of this to our distributors, we found it appropriate to play that old song that goes, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, and there's no one bloody tougher. So the next step was that Nick said, well, let's get a Tetra Pak. I see Gino Versio here tonight. Let's get a Tetra Pak and let's see if we can pack it, you know, for retail. And sure enough, through it came, in it went, and after 9 days pop, it was all going off. And at that stage, most people would have given up. But not Nick. He tried this way, that way, every other way. And eventually, unlike anybody else in the world, we were able to get 18-day shelf life, which made it practical to sell it through the supermarkets and everywhere else. Now, Tetra Pak thought they could get some extra business worldwide out of this. So they put an article in the Tetra Pak News. And that went worldwide. Next thing, we've got calls coming in from all over the place worldwide asking how we did it. Well, Nick wasn't about to tell them unless they had a very big checkbook. And anyway, there was a company called St. Ivel, and you mentioned the company before. And so Maria has always organised the trip, and Nick and I went across to see this company. They were in Bath, in England. And as we were travelling up there for this meeting, it snowed like hell, and we were about an hour late. And we walked in there with 2 little Aussie guys, and here's all these, you know, executives and heavens knows what, very disgusted with the fact we were late. We couldn't do anything about it. Anyway, the managing director said to Nick, so you're telling me you can get 18 days shelf life on the product? I said, are you a chemist? Are you a bioscientist? Are you a new line specialist? And Nick just looked at him, and this is exactly what happened, I can assure you, because I was nearly embarrassed. Not that you ever get embarrassed with anything Nick would do. Nick just turned around and says, I'm it. And the guy said, well, I don't get that. We've got a microchemist, we've got a bunch. We've been trying for 2 years to get soup with a long life, and all we can get is 9 damn days. And you're telling us you're getting 18 days. He said, I've got to tell you, I'm very sceptical about what you 2 Aussie guys are telling me from way down there in Australia. If our big company can't do it, I can't see how you can do it. And Nick turned around to this managing director and he said, listen, I've been in business too long to be called a liar. Here. And he dropped the samples on the desk and said, ring me in 20 days. 20 days later, we got a phone call from them. Nick got a phone call. And they said, your soup's terrific. And we put it past the microbiologist and it works. It's good stuff. So they sent the 2 guys out and we've toed and fro with the contract, and eventually they came out and we picked them up and took them to the solicitors, signed all the contracts. They bought the product at a very good upfront fee and a very good royalty. And I'm driving across the West Cape Bridge, and the guy said in the back, he said, well, we've paid for it now, what's the secret? And Nick said, oh, we drop it in a tub of water. I tell you what, you should have seen that guy's face. He said, we paid all this damn money and you put it in. We tried that and it didn't work. And Nick said, well, be patient. When we get back to the factory, we'll show you how it's done. And that all went very smoothly. The bottom line is that when we talk about solving a problem and having an idea and creating that idea in action, that's how you get business. Pancita Foods said, this is a great idea, this fresh soup, and they're picking up small companies. And they paid well over the odds and gave Nick and Maureen a price they couldn't refuse for the company. All because of the problem and solving the problem. I want to move on now, and I know we're pretty limited for time, so I'll speak fast if I have to. With Original Juice, we were very lucky to have Nick and Adam running the show, and Maureen was just a vital part of that cog because of the fact that she put real strong administration into the business, and there was no mucking around, and us sales blokes couldn't get away with anything. It was terrible. And, you know, she would look after all the invoicing and everything like that, and it was just a rock of strength. And in particular, I want to make mention tonight of Becky, because she had the terrible task of going up to New South Wales, not that New South Wales is terrible, but to launch the product up there, cold turkey. We had an advantage down here in Victoria because everybody knew the Patra name, and so it helped us when we were trying to sell it into the supermarkets, etc. Not only that, some of our distributors from Redicut came across, so that helped us. And the territories were a lot easier in Melbourne to sort out than the past. But Becky did a brilliant job with that. Well done. Now, we got things going, and the distributors did a fantastic job, and within a couple of years, the Safeway Group, as an example, we're doing $10 million in turnover. And it was because of what our distributors did. They'd not only deliver, but they'd fill the shelves, they'd meet with the girls, their wives would run demos, and so we got that up to 10 million in sales. And I got a call one day from Safeway, and they said, "Oh, Alan, we want to see you for a meeting." And I went to the meeting, and he said, "I've got some really good news for you. You'd be so pleased. Instead of having all these little trucks running around Melbourne, we're going to cross-stock the product and put it in the warehouse." And I said, "You call that good news?" Because of all these guys, we lost a hell of a lot of income. You know, I called in the big brass, got Nick to come to the next meeting and the meeting after, and we ended up going to the national place in Sydney with the managing director, CEO of Woolworths, Safeway, sorry. And he said, "Oh, look, I can see your point, you know, blah, blah, blah." But it didn't work out, and as it turned out, a guy called Bernie Brooks was in charge. Got the name right? I didn't think you'd forget it, Nick. Got a guy called Bernie Brooks. He got involved. He said, "No, you're going into the warehouse and that's all there is to it." And Nick said, "No, we're not." And by this time our distributors, as Maria would remember, were getting pretty upset, and you know, they were talking about solicitors and you know, suing us and all sorts of things. It was pretty hairy. And anyway, the guy rang up and said, Nick, I'm going to give you one more chance. Are you coming into the warehouse?" And Nick said, "No." He got another phone call the next day from the same guy. "Look, this is your very last chance. You're coming into the warehouse. You've got to pardon me here." And Nick just turned around and said, "You can go and get F." And that was it, hung up. So that night we got all the distributors, shoved them in the tea room, and they were pretty angry to come in. And a few said, "Can I bring the solicitor?" I said, "Just wait, listen to what Nick's got to say." Anyway, Nick turned around to the guys and said, "Well, we know you're going to lose." He said, "But I've pulled out and I'm going to lose $10 million. I'm with you boys. I'm supporting you. And we'll get the sales elsewhere, no matter what we do." And we did. Two ways. One, the distributors got a whole lot of extra business. And we went to every distributor's house with their wives and said, "Righto, what are you going to lose?" And then set a goal to get that amount. We went to the supermarkets and we said to Coles, "Okay, Safeway are going to kick us out. Well, we're going to pull out of Safeway, not get kicked out. And you can pick up a lot of their business, not only with the juice, but with other products." And Coles said, "That's a good idea." And Franklin said, "That's a good idea." Woolworths said, "That's a good idea." And we organised an advertisement in the paper, the Herald Sun, the next morning. And we had page 5 was Coles, page 7 was Franklin's, page 9 was Woolworths, and in the Frankston Gazette, the Ritchie store and others. And it read, "Coles proudly stock original juice, 100% Australian." And it had a big picture of the bottle. And the gutsy logo that we used at the bottom was, "Original juice available everywhere, except Safeway." And it worked. 6 or 7 months later, not even that probably, Maureen would probably be able to let you know better, but we picked up that loss of sales elsewhere, and our distribution was increased dramatically. So much so that the Golden Circle people gave Nick and Maureen an offer far too good to refuse. And it was because of the additional distribution we had. They had their own juices, but they didn't have the deep distribution that we gained through the problem we had with Safeway. And I can tell you, when the boys left that room that night, the doom and gloom on their faces because Nick was going to support them turned to, come on boys, we can do it. And that's the attitude I wanted to get through, and the example I want to get through tonight is one, how Nick supported his staff so much, but the second is, and it's something we can all learn, that handling problems is a matter of taking responsibility for it. Nick did that with Safeway. Taking ownership of it, and then coming up with a plan on how we're going to overcome it. We overcome it, and look where it ended up. In great success with people here tonight. And I just want to say in closing that everybody, once again, that worked for Nick, had anything to do with Nick, has always been treated very fairly and exceptionally well. And I can only say that to Nick and Maureen, the children and the grandchildren, I wish you a wonderful health and wonderful happiness for the rest of your life. And thanks for having me tonight.
Thank you, Alan. Really priceless memories, and great to hear those stories from you. Well, now I'd like to introduce one of our sponsors for tonight's event, the proprietor and managing director of Kernel Citrus at Ballroom, Mr. Philip Williamson. Come on up, Philip. Now, this is a really significant citrus farm grower, and he's been a very close associate of Nick Thyssen, and I hope he's going to talk to this. He's witnessed firsthand Nick's generosity and integrity, sustaining over the years to the farming communities. I hand it over to you.
Thanks for the opportunity to do this. I'm not a very good, I don't have a very good memory, so I've got to read it. I left school in December 1958 and started work on my father's orchard in 1959. Our total crop of Valencia oranges in 1959 and 61 were picked on the ground, approximately 1,000 tonne each year. A friend of mine, a truck operator by the name of John Ford, called in home one day and said to me, I'd like you to meet this young Greek man who had been known to John Ford since Nick first moved to Australia, where he worked in a coffee shop in Jeffery. He told me to find him in the new factory in Dudley Street, near Festival Hall. I did go and meet Nick there, but it wasn't for long after that Nick came to Ballroom to look to buy oranges from our local co-op, Border Packers. Up until then, the payment terms for oranges from juice factories were terrible. It was called FISCC terms. What FISCC means or stood for, I still don't know. What it really meant was that we're on 90-day terms. I can't remember the price Nick offered, but when he made his offer, he said to the management, what I can do is pay weekly. After 90 days, that was a great achievement. We became very good patron suppliers, always with a very good relationship, except on one occasion when Nick was late one night to meet our manager left him standing in the rain while he was talking about supply of grapefruit. Do you remember that, Nick? At that time, our Victorian Premier, Henry Bolte, was asked by the public, what had he done to lose so much weight? His replies was, I'm on a grapefruit diet. This created grapefruit to be a very short supply and the price skyrocketed. If I remember correctly, Nick was paying $56 a tonne for oranges and $80 a tonne for grapefruit. From that time on, our relationships with Nick and Patra grew. My packing shed, Kernel Citrus, oversupplying Patra Sydney, and Border Packers kept supplying Melbourne. The other industry, the citrus industry, was going very well until Nick sold to Beatrice Foods. They changed the processing way and the marketing from the way Nick did it, which virtually left us with no market of any value.
Kennett Citrus bought and transferred the whole of the Patra Sydney plant to Ballroom. We squeezed and tankered most of our juice to Murrayland Fruit Juices in Mildura, where Don Carrasa was the managing director. This worked out quite well, and at the same time I was involved in a little small juice factory in Brunswick called Victoria Drinks. As chance may have it, Nick took over Victoria Drinks and changed the name to the original juice company. Talking to Nick one time, he told me that original juice grew 7 times faster than Patra. At that time, Border Packers joined with Berry Fruit Juices. It left our farm the only supplier for original juice from Ballroom. We supplied original juice between 3,000 and 4,000 tonnes of oranges and grapefruit per year. When Nick asked me to find more land and plant more grapefruit, we found the land and planted an extra 9,000 trees. All went very well until I was in Nick's office one day and he told me he had sold original to Golden Circle. Then asked me would I be interested in going in shares in a big orchard. After a lot of discussion, I agreed. That was Northern Citrus at Hillston. All was going very well until the global financial collapse. Heinz took over original from Golden Circle. Our price for Valencias was dropped from $3.40 to $1.70. Luckily, at that particular time, Nick had signed a contract with Golden Circle that the price never went down, which was a great saviour for Northern Citrus. I was very lucky. Nick took over my shares in his Hillston farm. That saved me from bankruptcy in those particular times. As you have heard, our very profitable times in the citrus industry have always rotated around Nick being in Patra, involved with Patra, and then the original juice. I have some really good memories of working with Nick for so many years and becoming good friends and enjoying some good times. One memory was to go to Sorrento for a weekend to go fishing, but we ended up in Yea drafting cattle for Woolworths. It was a bit different fishing, but it was a great experience because I'd never had anything to do with cattle in my life. The best times were fishing in the Whitsundays. We caught some great fish. The best was a metre-long Maori wrasse. It was cooked by Nick and Don. I would say it was the best fish I'd ever eaten. We now have a small juice factory in Ballroom called the Great Australian Squeeze. We have the best orange juice in Australia, and we have achieved best quality from Nick telling me how to make juice, and which I would never have been able to achieve without Nick. But our biggest problem is that we've never been able to market it properly, not the way Nick has always done it with the likes of Patra and Original. Thanks, Nick, for our business relations and more so a great friendship. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Philip. Again, it's lovely to hear these up-close and personal stories. Well, we've come to the pointy end. It's my great pleasure to introduce the former Premier of Victoria, a great Philhellene and an ardent supporter of Greek Australians, the Honourable Jeffery Kennett, to officially launch the book titled Nick Thyssen, the story of a great innovator to remember. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Kennett.
Thank you, John. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Nick, Maureen, Becky, Lani, family, friends, one and all. I understand you're going to get a copy of this tome as you leave. Professor Tamis, I've read other books of yours on Greek history, etc. This is the first book I've understood. When I first received it some weeks ago, I put it down and then started reading it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. For a number of reasons. I think the first one is, I've known Nick for many years, and I'll come to that journey in a short time. But secondly, when you read this book, the title is wrong. It should have been Nick and Maureen, not just Nick. Because what I have learned in life, and there are a group of Australians from all around the world who've come to this country and built something that is quite extraordinary. But invariably, the person who gets the credit is so often the male, but without the support of their partner and wife, and then family, they simply wouldn't achieve the sorts of things that we're celebrating here today. So this is a joint effort, which reinforces in my mind as I read the book three things. Firstly, Nick's original and early life, travel to Australia. I think your parents must have been fairly tough in the early days when they threw you out at, well, you walked out at 16 years of age, and then spent 40 days on a boat coming to Australia, and after a year going up to Shepparton. And I see Don Carazza here from Mildura. There are people here who have had very long associations. So it's that early life, the thing that drove Nick to achieve and over time to deliver. And then there was the relationships, which started clearly with Maureen, and then ultimately through family, and then his continual connection to all things Greek, which I think has been so important. And then there was the third stage of his life, which has been the business life, which has been referred to by a number of speakers here tonight, and I'm not going into it in great detail. I, as I said, read the book a few weeks ago, and the last few days I've been down the coast and I took it back to read again. I said, there's one photo missing in this. There's a lot of happy photos. But where's the one of Nick and Maureen when they got married? There's no... So are you two married? And the answer is obviously yes. And it's been something like, how many, 68, 64, how many years? 68? Oh, well, make up your mind, please. They've been married a good period of time. But when you read the book, you understand why. Because at the time that the proposal went out, etc., there wasn't total acceptance by Nick's father of this union. But it wasn't long until after they got married that Nick's father came back and fundamentally apologised and welcomed Maureen into the family and been good ever since. But then when I said to them this evening, where's the photo? Because so many of the photos of Maureen are of a young, happy, beautiful young lady. I wanted to see her in a wedding dress. Because of the turmoil at the time, they went to the registry office and got married very, very quickly. But it's been a marriage that's been built on a rock, and it's been family, and the same applies, as I say, this connect to the Greek community. They've never forgotten their heritage, and they've been terribly, terribly generous. In terms of the commercial operations of their life, again, it started off as Nick and Maureen, and then more recently it's been the girls and their son and family. And there's been changes along the way, circumstances, selling the business, starting a new one, Procal, etc. But there's always been this hunger for innovation, for something new. And sadly, so often in life, a lot of businesses fail because they develop something that's excellent and then they just keep producing it. And they don't innovate, and they don't change, and they don't move with the time. So Nick was very truly, with his family and staff, very much an innovator. And I guess I first met Nick, I don't know how many years ago, but when it was in his Patra days, and I met him along the line over the years, and right now I'm chairman of the original juice company that Nick put together so many years ago. And when I was asked to join it as a director and chairman 3 or 4 years ago, I said no, I was too much focused on other things. And they came back to me and asked me to do so. And I eventually joined 2 or 3 years ago. And we're at the moment in the movement of a very major coming together of the original juice company, SPC, and a powdered milk company. But I want to share with you one moment that I will never forget. When I went out to Mill Park for the first time, which was the base of the original juice company, next to the boardroom at one stage I needed to go to the toilet. I walked into this gold-plated, unbelievable collection of products that you would find in a toilet. And I said to the staff, who in God's name put this together? And it was you. And so much of it reminded me of my times back to Greek and gold and everything. It was all there. It's a very luscious office. And when this merger goes through, I've asked if we can dismantle that toilet, and I want to take it home. Because it's so much better than anything I've ever seen or had. So everywhere you've gone, Nick, you've left seeds in the ground. They're all very different seeds, but they're very personal seeds. So, to Professor Tamis, who has put together this book, and why I started by saying earlier that this isn't just about this is about Nick and this is about family. You have a very good friend who expresses the same sort of view about his wife, and that is Rick Smith, who owns PFD Food Services, and up until recently, when he sold it to Woolworths. And he came from Scotland with nothing, but with his wife, built a very large business. And he always gives credit for the fact that they did it together. Without him, he would not have been able to achieve, and then more later with his family. So my life increasingly recognises a couple of things. The first one is the gift of life itself. So to the younger family members, young, strong, healthy, no worries in the world, we often take life for granted. But we shouldn't. And particularly we shouldn't now in Australia when we look at what's happening around the world. We're very, very fortunate. We don't have any other country on our borders. So waking up in the morning and having another 24 hours to me is terribly important. The second thing I'm absolutely sure of is that no one on their own delivers. It is collections of people. It is people coming together that ultimately deliver the best results. And you often find turmoil being created where individuals think they possess all of the knowledge. And they don't. We share knowledge. We have certain skills. We call upon others who have skills that we don't have. So, in hearing people talk about Nick's commercial success tonight, I leave you with this thought very simply. The contents of this book should be a good guide for all of us. Nick, Maureen, their family are good people. They have very good values. Commercially, they look after their staff, as we have been told. Together with so many ingredients, they have delivered beyond the wildest expectations of so many. So I value people and assess people on their character, on their values. None of us are perfect. But Nick, Maureen, you should be exceedingly happy and pleased with what you and your family have achieved and delivered, and can still deliver, and will continue to deliver. Tamis, you should be very much saluted, because you've written a book that most in this room will read, will understand, and will go away having learned something. So it's with great pleasure that I, on behalf of all of us, thank you both for what you've contributed to our lives. Thank you, author, for putting it all together, and to family. When you get this, read it, and then think about it. And think about it, what it represents and how you stack up to the value system that is expressed here. So, ladies and gentlemen, I officially launch Nick and Maureen's book on their success. Thank you.
It's always a delight to be in your company, and they were some marvellous words. And speaking of marvellous words, it's time now to meet the man that crafted the marvellous words that are in this book. It really does give me a lot of pleasure to now introduce Professor Anastasios Tamis to tell us about his journey in writing this magnificent book. Tasso, come on up, please.
Esteemed Assembly, ladies and gentlemen, before I start, I would like to bestow my gratitude and my, I would say, sincere thanks to the former Premier and a great Philhellene and a lover, I should say, of the Hellenic community of Australia, Mr. Jeff Kennett. And I would like to express our thanks and our gracious thoughts for what he has offered to all of us the last 40 at least years. I first met Mr. Kennett when he was a minister back in 1970, early 1970s, late in the 1970s. And he was explaining to me his own personal story about his own mother, his own family, and the time that he served in the Australian Army. And he is really a true and sincere person, gentleman. And I would like to bestow, as I said, our gratitude to him by, as a token, I would like to offer him the best wine in Victoria, the Surpass 2019, produced by Surpass Estate in Yarra Valley. That's for you, Premier. In Greece, Now, I won't elaborate my thoughts in the way that our Premier Jeff Kennett has done. I would like to stick on my own profession, the teaching profession, so I'm going to be more approachable and less understanding, if I can. We are here this evening to pay our tribute and to celebrate the journey of a young 16-year-old lad who left his home with £5 in his pocket on board of the Kyrenia and crossed the Indian Ocean in search of a better life. As a result, this later led to the great innovations in the local and international food industries which we enjoy today. We honor this evening the pioneering Greek immigrant who revolutionized the genre, the distribution and the maintenance of the food industry in Australia and around the world. We pay our respect to a person whose persistence, innovative talent, inventive mind, and expanded Australian food trade and industry in this country. Today, we honor the man who nationally and internationally introduced and dispensed citrus fruit juice, fresh salads and fruit, fresh soup, and progressively changed the way office employees, hospital patients, restaurateurs, and people in general access food in public places. Today, we honor an Australian settler who had the good fortune to marry an intelligent and adventurous young lady who together as husband and wife were able to lead the road to family and business success. The portrayal in the book of talented Adam George Thyssen commemorates his memory, depicting his remarkable and decisive input to the inauguration, operation and development of the Procol dairies, a powerful industry which since 2003 is producing the most awarded Greek yogurt in the Australian market. It was the insight and commercial talent that Adam inherited from his father Nick, and the respect for the Greek dairy tradition that established Procol in Australia as the most delicious yogurt in the market. Those fortunate to have tried in earlier on the second floor are my witness. Nick and Maureen remained for almost 70 years, Mr. Kennett, almost, as a consubstantial force through hard work, tireless and continuous struggle, passions, emotions, empathies and tragedies, restraint, temperance, facing uncomfortable emotions such as fear, intimidation, danger, difficulty, and uncertainty with courage and fortitude. Being courageous did not mean that they were not absent of fear, but they, especially Nick, were well prepared to face any form of fear or obstacle. I feel honored that Nick and Maureen granted me the privilege and honor to compile Nick's story and Maureen's story. I feel fortunate to have had the opportunity to spend endless hours with Nick Thyssen, narrating a difficult and stony childhood life. During the 16 years he lived in Greece, 10 were years of war, years of destruction and famine. Then came his journey, the difficult years of survival in Shepparton and Melbourne, when alone and helpless, he cried for 2 weeks in a blind room that had a skyline for a window until his brother Kostas returned from Sydney. The first brave steps followed the restaurants of the Greek pioneers, the years of his connection with Maureen, the first business endeavors in grocery stores and sheet metal warehouses, the humanity of a Jewish businessman who stood by him as a guardian angel, the certainty offered to him by an Australian bureaucrat of the Ministry of Immigration to bring his own siblings and parents. His partnership with a child who survived in the Eastern Bloc, the first success to market fresh fruit salads and natural oranges in Melbourne hotels, despite the reaction of his partner, the rise of the world's first natural Jewish industry, leaving behind as obsolete the tin cans of concentrated orange powder drinks. And then followed the triumphant move to his other successful companies and in industrial units, dozens of them, some successful, others less successful, but all with the air of leadership new ideas and innovation. I will not dwell any further. You will have the opportunity, reading the book, to follow the journey of his life, a life which teaches that when you fall, you must rise. And if you fail, to persist and persevere. And if you bend, to resist. Nick Thyssen's amazing social, business, industrial, economic success had been unique in Australia. His case remained distinctive, authentic, inimitable, and most importantly, innovative for the Australian and international business world. He is a most unique case of an immigrant who settled as a teenager, as I said, in Australia without formal qualifications, without substantial support, a youngster who opposed strict intra-family core rules, showing strong resistance to cultural introversion, and emerged as one of the most ingenious innovators in Australia's and world's fresh food industry. He constitutes an unprecedented phenomenon of perseverance and innovation as a merchant and industrialist, a farmer and citrus fruit grower who claimed and achieved via his charisma and his persistence a commanding place among those who proved to be pioneers in the global history of the food industry. Nick remains a commercial industrial brilliance. He was gifted because of his persistence in first planning and then realizing his goal was not determined by the size of the monetary gain or loss, but by whether the idea or strategy to be implemented would be a successful novelty to benefit himself, his family, and the people. He was interested in being a conqueror of his goal, regardless of whether the success would cost him money. Money for him had little value. His main emphasis was to achieve, unless they simply provide means to achieve the novel ideas and make it a reality. Nick's extraordinary development of social and economic activity in the last 65 years also brought forth and provided the necessary material foundations for the rejuvenation of the vegetable and citrus growing industries in the southern states of Australia. During the years 1960 to 2024, as we are talking today, small townships across both banks of Murray River grew in prosperity and population, and farms and stations were filled with casual and permanent farm workers following his commercial initiatives, even today with his Procal industry. The foundation of the food manufacturing business establishment, which he achieved, were all truly remarkable. The machinery which he either modified or invented reached a high degree of efficiency, highly improving the relevant industries. Nick remains a commercial genius. From Nick's case, the insight into the production and the distribution of natural fresh juice and the creation of Patra juice in 1960. It was the innovative Nick who, using fruit salads and as a springboard, switched to the ready-cut vegetable salads in 1980, thus inextricably connecting the food industry in the southern capitals of the states with the vast hinterland of Australia. He made sure, along with industrial activity, to become a cattle and pig breeder himself, as well as a citrus grower, so that he could at the same time have full supervision of both the food industry and the agricultural economy. Philip has elaborated on that a few minutes ago. I will not tell you with more areas of his achievement and success, but you've got the book here to proceed. But I will not stop short of revealing the acquisition of the Churchill Island and its development was aimed at a visionary desire of Nick to transform this island into a tourist destination and highlight its historical importance as a military bastion standing in the mouth of Port Phillip Bay. He finally decided with his partner to return the Churchill Island to the people of Victoria, receiving the gratitude of the Hamer Liberal government in 1976. Good on you, Nick. Thank you very much for that on behalf of the people, for giving back to the people the Churchill Island. Nick Thyssen remains a unique, authentic, and original man. He possesses an unparalleled personality. He has his own way of approaching people and transplanting trust and faith in them. Alan has also spoken about it. If all the ideas he placed on the table over the years had been implemented, the food trade and market economy in general could have been even greater. Nick launched the first ever fresh picture marketable frozen goods in Australia. His first ever fresh shoot with a longevity of more than 3 weeks in the world. And he was the man who supported the farmers and the citrus growers with set contracts far greater than any other organized local and regional consortia in this country. I will stop here, and you will allow me, including our Australian compatriots in this room, to whisper, say a few words in our mother tongue to celebrate his childhood years, and that would be not more than 5 minutes. Κυρίες και κύριοι, έχετε την ευτυχία και την χαρά να έχετε στην αίθουσα αυτή έναν από τους μεγαλύτερους, θα έλεγα, ηγέτες του ελληνισμού στον χώρο της οικονομίας, στον χώρο της βιομηχανίας. Η άποψή μου είναι ότι ιστορικά είναι ο πλέον εφευρετικός, ο πλέον καινοτόμος. Όλοι μέχρι τώρα, οι περισσότεροι τουλάχιστον, προσπαθούσαμε να δούμε πώς φτιάχνουν κάποια πράγματα οι γονείς μας, η μητέρα μας κτλ, οι ξένοι, οι Κινέζοι, και προσπαθούσαμε να κάνουμε κι εμείς το ίδιο και να τα αναπτύξουμε. Ο Νίκος Thyssen και η γυναίκα του, η Maureen, άρχισαν από την αρχή, από το ground zero, βρήκαν την ιδέα, την υλοποίησαν. Ποτέ μέχρι το 1960 δεν σέρβιραν φυσικό χυμό. Στα ράφια των σούπερ μάρκετς υπήρχαν μόνο κονσέρβες, δεν υπήρχαν φυσική χυμή. Δεν υπήρχαν σαλάτες στα σούπερ μάρκετς για να τρώνε οι υπάλληλοι στις 12 η ώρα μέχρι σήμερα. Δεν υπήρχαν ούτε οι φρέσκες σούπες στα νοσοκομεία και στους στρατώνες. Τα χρωστάμε στον άνθρωπο αυτόν, ο οποίος αναστήθηκε, γεννήθηκε. Έχουμε και την αδερφή του, την Ευανθία, στην αίθουσα αυτή και θέλω να πω πόσο πραγματικά νιώθω έναν σεβασμό, διότι συμπαραστάθηκε και η Ευανθία στα χρόνια αυτά τα δύσκολα του Νίκου Thyssen, εργαζόμενοι σε επιχειρήσεις και σε εταιρείες. Μαζί με την Ευανθία και με τις άλλες αδερφές του, την Παναγιώτα και την Άννα, και τον αδερφό του Κώστα ακόμα, έζησαν τα δύσκολα χρόνια του πολέμου, της μεγάλης γερμανο-βουλγαρο-ιταλικής κατοχής. Έζησαν τον εμφύλιο πόλεμο, έζησαν τη φτώχεια και τις στερήσεις. Και μέσα από τα πέτρινα αυτά χρόνια βγήκε αυτό που σήμερα τιμούμε. Είναι λοιπόν ο άνθρωπος που βγήκε μέσα από τα ερείπια και την κοσμοχαλασιά ενός πολέμου για να γίνει ο μάρτυρας μιας επιχείρησης η οποία τιμάει την Αυστραλία και τον κόσμο όλο. Νίκο και Maureen, θέλουμε εκ μέρους και της ελληνικής ομογένειας να σας ευχηθούμε όλα τα καλά. Ευχαριστώ για την εμπιστοσύνη που μας δείξατε. Να είστε πάντα γεροί και δυνατοί και ελπίζω όλοι μας και όλοι σας να συμφωνείτε μαζί μου ότι θέλουμε τους νέους ανθρώπους μας να πάρουν το παράδειγμα του Nick Thyssen και της κυρίας Thyssen, να μείνουν μαζί 65 χρόνια, πρώτο παράδειγμα, που είναι πολύ σημαντικό. Γι' αυτό ήθελα να πω και το τονίζω αυτό σε παρένθεση, ότι εάν εγώ θα μπορούσα να είχα μιλήσει στον Πατριάρχη μας που ήταν εδώ, θα ήθελα να γεννήσω μία εκκλησία, την καθεδρική στην Μελβούρνη και την άλλη στο Σίδνεϊ, και να μαζέψω όλα εκείνα τα ζευγάρια στην Αυστραλία, τα ελληνικά, τα ορθόδοξα, που έχουν πάνω από 50 χρόνια συνεχούς γάμου, για να τους δώσω από μία εικονίτσα και να τους κεράσω πραγματικά ένα σταυρουδάκι, για να δώσω το παράδειγμα ότι πρέπει εμείς οι νεότεροι άνθρωποι να κρατάμε την οικογένεια, να στηριζόμαστε στην οικογένεια και να αντιμετωπίζουμε τα προβλήματα με τον τρόπο που τα αντιμετώπισε ο Νίκος και η Μωρή. Δεν θα σας κουράσω περισσότερο, σας εύχομαι καλή πρόοδο για τα παιδιά σας και κάθε ευτυχία σε εσάς, και να σας πω ότι το βιβλίο σήμερα το δωρίζει η οικογένεια Thyssen σε όλους σας, όσοι είστε παρόντες κατά οικογένεια. Ανταυτού, αν θέλετε, μπορείτε και αν έχετε την δύναμη να προσφέρετε κάτι, μια δωρεά προς το νοσοκομείο παιδών, το Melbourne Children's Hospital. Υπάρχουν τα άτομα εδώ που μπορούν να σας κατευθύνουν πώς να το κάνετε αυτό. Ο στόχος μας είναι να μαζέψουμε από διάφορες εκδηλώσεις μέχρι τον Μάρτιο τουλάχιστον $25,000. Να είστε καλά, καλή νύχτα και καλή δύναμη σε όλους σας. Ευχαριστώ.
Thank you, and more importantly, congratulations on producing such a fine book. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to enjoy some entertainment, but before then, I'd like to offer a vote of thanks to our hosts this evening, and also to the organisers of this evening. I think you'll agree it's been brilliantly organised in this gorgeous hall. And as Tasra just mentioned in Greek, for those of you who didn't understand, when you receive your book after we've been entertained by the choir, all we ask is that you feel a little bit of generosity to the Melbourne Children's Hospital. And that would be a lovely bit of icing on the cake of what has been a beautiful evening.
And I would like now, ladies and gentlemen, to invite personally and on behalf of all of you, and of course on behalf of our Master of Ceremony, Mr. Mandos, the protagonist, the hero of tonight, to say a few words to the audience. And it is a very important event. Unfortunately, and despite the ailment and all the problems, Mr. Nick Thyssen is willing and also eager to say a few words to all of you about his own life.
From the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate you all turn up tonight here. But I can't tell you any more because all the other previous speakers, they've written it out like a book. It's told me the whole story, so I've got nothing to say. But let's go thank Tamis, Tamis, we're extremely hard working for 2 years to put this book together. Thanks to Jeff Kennett, the group. Huh? Oh, that's great. Alan Marion and Phil Williamson, but also special thanks to my secretary, Miss Bryce. Who is she? Hard-working lady for 24 years. So, 44 years. Sorry. And then also I'd like to pass just a thanks to Miss Jones, and then she's here tonight, because she also very well of the hard-working woman and last for for 40 years anyhow. Now let's go what all this story started. Come back to my younger days. We come up just a war, the German war finished there, and also Civil War started. There was very big poverty in the whole country. So I said to my father, I want to leave. I want to go to another country. Reluctantly, he took me to Athens to put me in a boat. With the tears in his eyes. He gave me £5 English, which I still got. Anyhow, he hugged me and kissed me and gave me these £5 to go to Australia. I promised him I would be a good boy. He said to me, you've got to be careful with or mix with bad companies, blah, 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 blah. Typical fatherly advice. And I come to Australia, and I promised him if I go there, I will bring to Australia, you as well. I come here in 1951. I worked hard, I worked 3 jobs part-time, and finally, in the 3 years, I managed to buy a little built bar. That was very good, but the television came out, because I was relying on the theatre was there to get the business. Anyway, let's go. Then I went to the restaurant. Struck gold there, because after while I was there, I was advertising for a waitress to serve. And who you think came up? This beautiful, stunning star. And I looked at her and I said, I want to have her. She's mine. And we got married together. Over the years, she tried to teach me English. She did a bloody good job, because at the time, we are so like the language, we used to say, you and me got pictures to that. You and me, pictures to that. So she pulled me out of that and said, really, I don't know if you understand me. I think she did a good job teaching me correctly every time. But besides that, she was hands-on in all the jobs I did. I can remember when she was pregnant, and then it was 7 months pregnant, and we cutting fruit salad because we've got big orders for them. She's been busy in everything else. She also produced 3 lovely kids. I've lost 4 children, lost my son, but and she left with 2 stunning daughters. Lenny, I can't describe how good they are. When my son passed away, we had to build company together. Lenny, for no experience, took over. She said, I will look after. She's done a stunning job in the 4 years. He turned the business from $60 million turnover to $120 million. Beautiful, thank you. And also, Becky was different. She got other business with her. But earlier years, we said that we see me I 23 years you work. 22, huh? And she ran the Sydney factory as a manager. Did a bloody good job. So I'm very happy to please. I did not have so many friends or so many people in this movie. but I would like to thank bottom of heart everybody here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Nick. There's a lot of love in this room for you, and it's very justified. Now, we don't have the saltiriers, we've got some beautiful harp music. So please enjoy the music, and don't forget to collect your edition of the book. And as I gently prod you to give generously to the Melbourne Children's Hospital. Thank you for being so very kind to me. It's been a thrill to come down and be your MC again, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.